Good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for January 27th, 2022, recorded around 8:18 a.m. Eastern Time. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this morning, not much is occurring. We have a relatively interesting system that is expected to develop off the east coast of Florida over the next day or two and track northward. And we'll talk about this system that could be bringing a potential nor'easter to portions of the northeastern United States. And we'll talk about that here later in the segment. Otherwise, really not watching too much across the tropical Atlantic. Pretty strong upper level winds as we would expect for this time of the year. Couldn't occur across most of the main development region and really limiting any activity. Dry Saharan air, of course, we know how that goes. It's January 27th, so we would not expect to see anything really occurring out there. But otherwise, it's still a pretty gloomy day across most of Central Florida today. And in fact, if we actually go ahead and zoom into the region a little bit, we can actually notice that there's still a lot of upper level clouds over here and some lower level clouds beginning to overrun with some of this moisture that's now beginning to surge northward. This moisture is in response to a area of low pressure that will be expecting to cross the peninsula and help to kind of reinvigorate what might be happening off the coast here during the next several days. But we can kind of see how, again, we're just kind of getting this very low cloud deck. And in fact, we can actually take a look here at the METARs here at the Orlando International Airport. And right now, we can see that we are dealing with, this is the latest here at 12:53. So that would be at about 7:53 a.m. We have wind at 350 degrees at 9 knots. 7 statute mile visibility, overcast at 700 feet. So we're right in that IFR level there of flying. We got 7 statute miles though, so at least in the low levels we're not doing too bad, but overcast at 700, that definitely puts our ceilings there at 700 feet, so we're kind of in that IFR to marginal VFR range at this point. Temperature 16 Celsius, which is just about 60 Fahrenheit. Dew point right around 14 Celsius, so pretty close to there as well. And the altimeter is 3012, so our sea level pressure there is pretty much in the 1012 millibar to 1015 millibar range at this point. But we can see that these low clouds are expected to persist, and this has kind of been the occurrence over the last several days across the area. In fact, right now, if we actually go and if we put on the pressure falls and our temperature here, we can tell that, again, very cool air to the north across Central Florida today, and this is kind of the expected with a dipping front that's going to be coming in here. I mean, our temperatures don't really warm much, but we do get into the 60s down here near Lake Okeechobee and towards the coast, so just something interesting there. But taking a look here at the overall sea surface temperature anomaly pattern, this updated as of the 25th of January. We can tell that we're still in a pretty persistent La Nina pattern right now. Still some very cool anomalies off here in the Nino index, especially out here in the Nino 3-4 region, which is this region right in through here. This is what we measure for the state of the ENSO, whether it be El Nino, La Nina, warm neutral, or cool neutral. And again, what we can tell here is that this is still affecting our overall pattern. This is going to play a big role here in the upcoming 2022 hurricane season. But the indications are, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, that we'll probably be heading likely back to neutral phases by the time we get to the peak of the hurricane season. In the meanwhile, across the tropical Atlantic, we continue to still notice some overall warming across the region right now, that our anomalies are right around 1 to 1/2, in some cases 2 degrees above the long-term average, especially right up there near the coast of Africa. And this will play a huge role, again, if this is able to maintain itself through the start and the peak of the hurricane season. But again, I don't have a lot of faith in this maintaining itself, given the fact that it's, almost February. But we will be starting to warm up pretty soon. Again, once we really clear midway through February, we start to have less and less fronts that come all the way down here and make it all the way out here these trade winds are still going to be screaming through here through about July. But once we start to get the trade wind reducing, we could start to see that warm up again. So we'll just have to see how this overall evolves. But this will be interesting going forth. And it's interesting to point out, too, that most of the North Atlantic waters, including the Gulf of Mexico, are warmer than the long-term average. We can take a look at this here on the actual sea surface temperature map here. This is in degrees Celsius. We notice that we have a relative large plume here of about 25 Celsius waters all the way out through here. Let's highlight this in a bit better color. We can kind of tell that we have a large swath here of about 25 Celsius waters, and this is following in the Gulf Stream. Got 21, 22 Celsius all the way up here. And again, this is helping in part to fuel what could be upcoming towards the latter half of this week, or the latter part of this week, mainly beginning on Saturday and into Sunday. We'll talk about that here in a moment. If we take a look here at the ENSO predictions, this is from the IRI and the CPC outlook as part of the PowerPoint presentation here put together by NSUP over at the National Modeling Centers up in Washington, D.C. We can tell that, again, this is our ENSO forecast right now. So here we are. This is January, February, and March. So this is kind of where we're at. This has been the observed period so far. And I believe this is January. Yes, so this is early January 2022 as forecast. And we can tell that, again, we seem to be warming up. There's a fairly good consensus that we warm up and then kind of just hover right around this neutral line. We don't really have a lot of members. The half-degree line, remember, this is the El Nino threshold right here, and only 2 members bring it to the El Nino threshold. So we don't really have a consensus right now that we'll be seeing a El Nino. And in terms the La Nina conditions as well, we have a handful of models that kind of ride in that range, but most of them are on either side of warm or cool neutral. So there's a little bit of discrepancy, obviously. There's going to be model spread, but by the peak of the hurricane season, August, September, and October, we should be, for right now, under El Nino thresholds, and that might, again, contribute to what might happen in this hurricane season. Again, just to look at the statistical probabilities here, again, August, September, and October, only really about a 25% chance of El Nino, with about a 30% chance of La Nina and 45% chance of neutral conditions. So by far, neutral conditions so far are the winner. But again, we still have to get past that spring predictability barrier, which really won't be hit until sometime around late March or early to mid-April. So that's when we should start to see everything kind of be solid and solidified there. So what's going to be happening over the next several days? Well, this is the GFS forecast, the 6Z run, valid today at 8 a.m. We'll go out here. This is valid today here at 7 p.m. We notice that what we have going on, we have a little bit of an upper level disturbance right now that's going to be dipping southward. This is going to help to interact with some of the temperature, the thermal contrast, the temperature differences here between hot and cold air. And this will be kind of rocketing off towards the east with time and help to kind of energize this area of disorganized showers and thunderstorm activity at the moment. And what we can kind of know is that eventually this air mass begins to really dip south. We have a large push here of Arctic air pushing southward, and this Arctic air is going to help to kind of generate an increased amount of lift across this area. There's a lot of differential advection here, and this is causing a lot of lift in this area, and this is going to help to generate these shower and thunderstorm activities and lead to a mid-latitude cyclone generation. Of course, the waters at the surface are also helping. Again, they're warmer and thus helping to promote that surface flux response that is so crucial for these low developments here. We notice here that in particular on the GFS, again, we have started to see more of an east trend, and I believe That is probably in part because we have a rapidly deepening surface low up here, and most of the convective response is right around here, kind of tugging this off towards the east. Now, either way, there's going to be a lot of snow. Someone is going to see a lot of snow across the northeastern United States. In fact, here, if we actually kind of take a look here at the regional mid-Atlantic view, we can kind of see what we're looking at here. So again, this is the same 12Z GFS, or I'm sorry, 6Z GFS. We notice that again, we get the main surface low that's over here, and we get a lot of snow back here. Not a lot, but enough. And again, the snowfall amounts here, at least coming off of the GFS, I would suppose are not particularly interesting. Yeah, there's not really much here. There is some, and again, most of that is going to be confined to the coastal areas. If you get under any of these heavier snow bands, it's very possible to pick up, 6 to 10 inches plus of snow, especially out here near the Cape and stuff like that. We could definitely see some bigger problems over there. Now, the European forecast here, for example, this is the 60 run of the Euro, and again, the Euro is a little bit closer to the coast with this low track, and because of that, it depicts a greater swath of snowfall across this area. JFK could see upwards of, New York City could see about anywhere of about 5 to 6 inches. And then some places on eastern Long Island could see well over 12 inches, so well over a foot of snow. And again, this is in response because you have the surface low taking a much greater track towards the coast. And again, we can kind of see that the further you get here, we could be dealing with some mixing issues as well. And snowfall could be occurring all the way down into near Charleston, South Carolina. So we could be dealing with this kind of extent for a while. Now, the other thing that I do want to kind of point out here, and we're going to kind of zoom in here on the New England area for a minute, is the wind gusts. With a rapidly deepening surface low, we could be seeing some very strong winds, and winds could be gusting as high, according to the Euro, as 60 miles per hour in spots across parts of the Eastern Cape here. Boston upwards of 50, New York City over there at 34, according to the Euro. On the GFS, though, this is probably going to be a little bit less, as we just don't really have the surface low being as close to the coast, and so that would theoretically go ahead and limit the amount. But again, still upwards of 30 miles per hour in New York City and over 50 miles per hour there on the coast. So even Boston there at 45. So we could be seeing a pretty large swath of wind and potentially dangerous, damaging wind if the Euro solution does come to pan out. So it would be something to kind of monitor over the next several days. But again, a big snowstorm could be on tap here for portions of the Northeast over the next several days. Again, we'll just have to kind of keep in mind that if the surface low begins to track a little bit off towards the east here, then less snowfall for the interior region and more snowfall for the coastal regions. All right. With that being said, hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more over the next few days.